Alrighty, good. So, welcome to the Health Talk. I'm Dr. Brian Walsh, but you probably know that already. But so we're going to be talking specifically about these different sleep issues, and we'll talk about like what a problem it is in the U.S. because it's actually pretty bad, more than you realize. And then kind of why that happens, I think, for the most part. And then some natural things that we can do to help people overcome this sleep issue because it's really becoming pretty big, actually. I always like to start off with this quote because it kind of embodies how I feel. It says, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease." Right? That's like the whole. That was by Thomas Edison, like almost 100 years ago, right? And he knew that the human frame was important to protect your nervous system and to keep us healthy. That diet should really be like the foundation, basically, of what we do, and not junk food. And then getting to the cause and prevention, because in medicine, they're good at like drugs and surgery, but not so much about chronic conditions and about finding the cause and preventing it, where we want to get to the cause so you don't have the problem down the road. So they estimate like 65% of the American public has a sleep issue at least a few nights a week. That's a pretty lot, 65%. Say 44%. Every night or almost every night. So that's almost half people. And then 49% of the people that were surveyed said they just didn't feel refreshed when they woke up in the morning. So that's like half. And then approximately 25 to 30% of American public take sleep medications, like prescription drugs for that. So that's like, it's not a minor issue. It's actually a pretty big deal. And I think it's gotten worse in the past 10 years, just seeing people that come in, especially with all the stress, the past couple of years. But there's natural ways that we'll talk about that will help that. There's kind of a different ways you could look at the sleep. Some people have a problem falling asleep, or they just look at the ceiling for a while. Some people, they get to sleep, but then they wake up, a couple hours later, whatever. Some unfortunate people have both. Like they have a hard time getting sleep, and wake up. That's probably the worst. And then some folks, they can get back to sleep, but others, they'll wake up, 3 o'clock in the morning and forget it. They can't get back to sleep. So, and there's some reasons for both of those things. So one of the reasons why it's really important to get ideally at least 7 hours of sleep a night, they say that's kind of when you start getting less than that, could be issues. And actually more than that, like more than 9 hours, they say sometimes that's a sign that something's wrong too. But it causes, to be drowsy during the day. A lot of people don't realize that when you don't get enough sleep, that can affect your memory. So when people come to me for memory problems, I always try to get an idea like how many hours you sleep in a night. Because if they're like sleeping 6 hours a night, their memory's not going to be quite as good as it was. They've also found that people that have less sleep, more work-related accidents. So they're clumsier and they're just not as aware of their environment because they're just kind of groggy a little bit. This is an important one. I don't know if you've ever experienced, but they took a group of college students and they were healthy, in their 20s, and they sleep deprived them. They got somewhere between 5 to 6 hours of sleep, right? Within a day or two, they were having more sugar cravings than normal. And so that's one of the reasons why people can crave sugar more if they're not getting enough sleep during the night. That actually causes your blood sugar to fluctuate more. Which then that causes appetite and weight problems, right? So that's why sleep is an important thing for weight loss. And then this is interesting too. I thought people, when they get less than 7, especially 6, 4 times more likely to have depression because you're not getting enough sleep. So that's like a fairly simple way to correct depression, right? Just make sure people are sleeping good. So there's different reasons why this can happen. One is not getting the right nutrients in your diet, right? Because there's certain like B vitamins and minerals, especially things like calcium, magnesium, these different minerals. Your body needs that to keep it calm. And sometimes if we're like have a junk food diet or just aren't eating well, that can actually affect how our sleep, like our deep sleep is especially. Certain medications like some of the ADD medication, actually, and even adults take that now. They can tend to bump up your metabolism more, right? So some people have to be very careful about taking that much later than 1 o'clock or so because they'll start having sleep issues. Sometimes antihistamines will cause those issues. Blood pressure medications sometimes will do that. There's something that we always look at with folks is if they have toxins in their body, right? These toxins like the heavy metals or chemicals that build up in our body over the years, it can actually throw off your hormones that regulate sleep and your male and female hormones. So that can be a problem too. When it comes to food, sometimes if people eat too late at night, that'll also, ideally you would eat several hours before you go to sleep. Some people, if they eat too close to that, then your body's taking a lot of energy to digest food instead of just chilling,
Right.
So that can be an issue, too much food before bed. Caffeine, in general, some people can do that, no problems, but others past 2 or 3 o'clock and they're going to have sleep issues. Alcohol is like a two-edged sword. Some people, it'll help them get to sleep, but later in the night, it'll actually make them wake up more. So that's not always a good answer for the sleep thing, because it usually doesn't get you down deep enough for the rest of the night. An obvious thing is stress, right? The more stress you have in your life, it tends to keep your brain going in that thinking mode, and it's just hard to relax, right, to go to sleep. There's health conditions like restless leg syndrome. If you've ever known somebody that has that, it can make them it's hard for them to get comfortable, and it usually is worse when they start to go to sleep. And so there's some natural things actually that can help the restless leg and the sleep at the same time, because that's a lot of times that's a nutritional deficiency that they're missing with that. Some of the other things that's more popular now with the 21st century and everything is using our devices late at night, right? The blue light sometimes that comes off of those can stimulate our brain, and it just, when you're using these a lot of times, you can be in the thinking mode, right? And right before bed, you don't want to be in the thinking mode. You want to be in the relaxing mode, So that's one of them. And not being in front of the PC. One of the things that can be common too, people that have a lot of pain, right? If they're in a lot of pain and it's waking them up in the middle of the night, they just can't get a good night's sleep. So these are kind of like some of the medical things that can cause trouble. And there's, people talk, I have to take sleep medications, right, to get to sleep. They can be okay short term, but in general, they tend not to work well long term, because most people, they'll get used to it and they'll build a tolerance to it, right? And they'll have to switch to a different kind. And they've shown that for the most part, most of them still don't get you into a really good restorative sleep. So I tell people it can help as a Band-Aid while you get to the cause, and then wean off those things, because they're just not, that's not meant to be for long-term use. And you can withdraw from them sometimes too. And some people have, I don't know if you've ever heard, there's some of those sleep meds, they have a warning that people can do this sleepwalking kind of thing, where they look like they're conscious and they're doing stuff, but they have no memory of it happening. Like people have actually gone to the store and come back. Yes, it's just like, so that's definitely not something that you want to avoid that as much as possible, right? And there's the different things, I talked about the things people that have thyroid problems, right? Sometimes if the thyroid isn't working right, that'll disrupt your sleep. The adrenal glands are another biggie, because those help regulate stress and your blood sugar and all those things. If you don't have enough minerals to help that thing work and the B vitamins, then you won't get into that really deep sleep. And that's when people tend to wake up more in the middle of the night. Is they'll fall asleep okay, but then the adrenals aren't keeping their blood sugar stable, and then they wake up. So that's one of the things there. And then, like I said, minerals and B vitamins are really, if you're not getting enough of those, they'll also throw off the sleep cycle. And generally, I also mentioned there was things, these heavy metals and these other things. Sometimes a food sensitivity or allergy can actually contribute to the sleep thing, because it'll cause blood sugar problems and these other issues that make it so you can't get into that deep rest. And so when we use the nutrition response testing, the muscle testing, to figure out from an energetic standpoint, we can see, are there toxins, that are interfering? Is there vitamins that are missing? Is there a food that's interrupting these different things? So that sometimes we'll find things that we don't find, like in blood work and that kind of stuff. So that's where I use the nutrition response testing to help figure out those kind of causes. And once you get to those, then people will usually sleep better over time. And then we'll talk about other ways that you can do lifestyle-wise. When it comes to the food, avoiding especially sugar. Sugar, has that exciting and crashing effect on a lot of people, right? But in Chinese medicine, the liver is active like 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And that's a very common time for people to wake up. And some people, if they eat too many sweet things before going to bed, the liver has to deal with that, right? And the blood sugar thing, the adrenals do also, and sometimes that just having that sweet stuff will actually throw off the middle of the night's sleep. I mentioned the alcohol is a double-edged sword. Some people, they'll wake up more, exactly the sugar. Yep, that's a type of sugar. And then avoiding the artificial stuff. Anything artificial food, sometimes they just do weird things to our metabolism. You might as well avoid those. Yeah, that's right. It's not good for your body. I mentioned getting rid of toxins and those kind of things because that can disrupt your hormones. Correcting any thyroid, adrenal problems with different nutrients that we'll talk about. Something that is very powerful, it's been proven to work over and over, is relaxation techniques, right? Deep breathing exercises. Progressive relaxation is a kind of thing where you tighten your muscles and you relax your muscles, and you do it throughout the entire body, and that puts you in that kind of rest mode where your brain kind of shuts down. I tell people when it comes to technology, ideally like an hour before, you should back off technology, whether it's your computer, your phone, whatever it is. If you can start doing that an hour before, then a lot of times it takes your brain out of that thinking mode, right? Because that's just not how you want to be when you're going to sleep. I mentioned the blue lights. Sometimes they make these blue blocker glasses. I don't know if you've ever seen those. But they will block out the artificial blues that come from your overhead lights and any of your screens or stuff like that. That can actually be very helpful. So those are kind of some of the more lifestyle things you can do. On the nutrient side, there's actually lots of things that can help naturally, especially if it's more sleep problems that have been more recent, in the past 6 months to a year. People that have had sleep problems for years are the toughest, because what happens is they get in a habit of not sleeping good, and then they have to break that. So that's a little harder. But these are some of the things that I use for people, depending if they test well or not. L-tryptophan is L-tryptophan and something called 5-HTP. Those are both precursors to serotonin, to make serotonin. That's the kind of relaxing, feel-good neurotransmitter in your brain, and that can be very effective for some people to help them kind of chill more in the evening. There's one called GABA, which is an amino acid, GABA. That doesn't work for everybody. It's one of those nutrients that it doesn't absorb great when it comes to getting into the brain, but some people it does, and so it can be night and day for some people when they take this GABA stuff. Melatonin is an interesting thing. So they actually did a study and they showed that if people were deficient in melatonin, they did a blood test and their levels were low, it would create. If people are not deficient, it may not do much. So, and that's been my experience with people with melatonin. It usually either works or doesn't. And if some people have to take lots of it, like 10 plus milligrams, that usually means something else is going on, because when you start getting into the higher milligrams, it's almost like a drug, because you're like giving a lot of it at one time. And some people are groggy the next day too. It's not good.
Right, by the time it soaks in, it's too much.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. You wake up. Yeah. Wake up groggy. There's an amino acid called L-theanine, which is a really good one. It doesn't have like a drug effect. It just has a really calming effect on the nervous system. And some people will take that in the day and at night, because especially if they have a high stress job, it helps them be more even during the day.
Supplement I take has that.
Yeah, and that can be a very effective natural one. Fish oils that have more of what's called the DHA. There's two different kinds of oils in there, but the DHA is more relaxing, and taken closer to bed, like dinner or something, that can actually help chill you over time. The CBD can be very effective for some folks. Again, I think if there's certain receptors in your body, that use the CBD, and I think if you're low in those, like that's just the way your physiology is, then the CBD works really good. But some people, it just is not that. It's not the magic bullet, basically, right? And I mentioned the minerals, magnesium especially, calcium. Those kind of things are needed for your body. If you have that restless leg syndrome, one of the things I always tell people to rule out, magnesium's great for it. But if people have low or borderline iron levels in their blood, that'll trigger this restless leg thing.
Sure.
And that's really easy to correct. So that's always the first thing we rule out is some kind of iron problem with that too. Different herbs like valerian, hops, passion flower, kava, those can be really good. A lot of times you'll get combinations that have those in it, have all of them. But some may work better than others. But again, those have a more natural effect. They tend to not knock people out.
Yeah.
They still feel okay the next day. So those are the kind of things I tend towards, is those more natural things. But again, you got to get to the cause. If someone is really stressed out and they're not dealing well with their family life or work, they need to deal with that, because unless they do, they'll still have the high stress levels in their body at night and they won't be able to sleep. And nothing works, exactly right. Exercise is a biggie. I tell people to be careful. Some people, if they exercise too late in the evening, that'll cause trouble. But typically early in the morning, good vigorous exercise lowers your stress hormones, and that sleep can be much better, at the end of the day. There's something called, it's a technology. It's called audio-visual entrainment. So it's a little device that's made, and it uses frequencies that you listen to, stereo headphones, and then they can also use lights, these flashing lights that beat to a frequency as well. And what they do is they train your brain to be in that relaxed mode with a certain frequency. And so those things have been around for many years, and they can be very effective to help people break that cycle, that like insomnia thing. So those are some of the natural ways that you can get the body back into sync, basically, right? Because sleep is one of those funny things. When you get into the habit of losing sleep, it's hard to break out of it. But you need to look at it from all these different things. The food, the diet, what am I doing every day? With my stress, how am I going to deal with that? All those factors, when you do it all together, then is when you usually get a result that works. It might take months for you actually to get back into a good mode, right? But it can be done. And that's where we use the nutrition response testing to try to figure out any of those other factors that may be causing. And I just love the muscle testing for finding the right remedy, right? Because sometimes, whatever it may be, passion flower, these other ones may not work for one person, but it works great for another person. So that's why we like to try to use that technology to kind of zero in, basically, on it, to make sure that it's going to be the best fit for the person instead of wasting their money on a bunch of supplements, right? I think that's it. I think I got pretty much all the different remedies and everything. Is there anything you can think of?
No, it all makes sense, and definitely all makes sense. And some things I hadn't thought about, a lot of things I've experienced actually and has worked.